Hello everybody, I just finished a project. I've replaced all 4 of the cylinders on my John Deere 420 loader. I used aftermarket cylinders that I purchased from Surplus Center, and they were all brand new, just they were odd cylinders, and I had to cut the ends off and adapt the fittings to make it fit on the tractor. So anyway, this video will show you how I did that. Hello folks, I've had some problems with my loader ever since I bought it. The lift cylinders leak down. It's gotten progressively worse over the last 10 years. Now they leak down at about 10 inches an hour when it's in a static position. It's even worse when there's a load on it. So I want to replace these, and I already replaced the front ones with oversized cylinders, and that worked so well I'm going to use oversized cylinders here, and I'll probably rebuild these and sell them, or maybe sell them to somebody that wants to rebuild them. But anyway, I bought two of these cylinders from Surplus Center. These were $80, $79.99 plus shipping. 2-inch diameter piston, 1 1/4 inch diameter rod, nice beefy cylinders, and standard parts. So if I ever want to rebuild them, it would be easy to rebuild. The reason it was $80 is because it's got a weird end on it, which I'll just hack off. I'll hack this rod out the right length and weld the correct size DM tubing on it. And this fitting here, hydraulic fitting, points the wrong direction. It'd be much better if it pointed this way. So to make this fit, another problem is that the fittings are perpendicular to the pins. They need to be parallel to the pins. So it's got to be like this. So I've got to cut this off, and I've got to weld in a spacer between the DOM tubing and the cylinder, so I have clearance for this fitting. So I can't show you very easily from this camera angle how this is going to interfere with this bracket. So I'm going to do a clip pointing down. Alright, I think you can see here the way the fittings mount on the John Deere cylinder. So there's not a lot of clearance there. See, it's pretty close to this bracket or brace right here. So I've got to keep the hydraulic fitting back. Looks like about 1 5/8 inches back from the center of the pin. So when it's in there, it'll look like that, roughly. And the hose will fit to it. So anyway, I'm going to cut it up, weld some parts on it, put a coat of paint on it. We'll see what happens. Alright, so now I've got to cut off that section of DOM tubing off the end. I've taken the cover plug out, covered this up with tape because the cutoff tool gets in the way. So I'm going to use the air-powered cutoff tool. I'll cut that as close to the cylinder as I can without damaging the cylinder. Hopefully I'll be able to save this piece of DOM tubing for later use. Alright, so now I have the weld cut almost all the way through. Yeah, you can't see it on the video, but I cut down to the point where I can see a little bit of a crack here and there. When I try to go further than that, the wheel jams. So I'm just going to take it off the rest of the way by giving it a couple whacks. Well, it just took one whack. Alright, so now I just got to clean up the end a little bit with a grinder. Alright, so I've got the parts all deburred. And this one, the block, is 2 1/8 inches long. That's just long enough to make my distance correct here. I've got pretty close to 1 3/4 to the center of the pin. Actually, it might be a little long, but that's all right. It's going to be the same on both cylinders. So anyway, I beveled this sharply on the where it's going to be welded, and just going to weld that on there. Actually, first I will weld the DOM tubing to this block. I have to center it up perfectly. I'll make some kind of a little jig to do that, and I'll tack it together and then weld it. Then once that's welded, then I'll weld this onto here. And once I get that welded, I can find the length that I need to go from here to the bottom pin, which will be about around in there. So this will have to be cut off. I'll do that on the bandsaw. Anyway, it's shaping up. Okay, I have these ends all welded up, nice and pretty. One small problem though. I was getting ready to weld them onto the cylinders. I extended the cylinder all the way out, protected the rod with some scrap steel to keep a splatter off of it. I was ready to tack this on, and I decided I better check to make sure that this fitting has enough room to swing and go on there. Sure enough, it does not. So, got to back up a little bit, either redesign this, so I take a block like that and turn this part sideways and weld it on there. That should be secure enough. Maybe even taper it a little bit to make it look nicer. Or I can take these fittings and shorten them. Shorten it about 1/4 inch and retap the 3/8 National Pipe thread fittings in there. Tap it a little deeper so that this will thread in there. I think that probably will work. These cost $3 or $4, so if I ruin it, it's no big deal. I just have to wait to get more parts. That might take a week, 3 or 4 days at least. So anyway, it's getting dark. It's time to eat. I'll think about it, continue on tomorrow. Well, after giving it some thought last night, I decided to look into tapping these deeper. You can't see it on the camera. If you look down in here, you can see that the pilot hole stops short. They could go deeper, and the threads aren't even drilled all or tapped all the way down to the pilot hole. So I'm going to take them on the drill press, drill the pilot hole all the way down, and then I will tap them as deep as I can tap them. Then I will cut it off about right here. There should be about that much threads, about 3/8 of an inch thread. I think that'll be adequate. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, when I cut it off there, it'll swing, and I can put it on. I can use the fittings the way they. I can use the weld-on piece that I made. A little tapping lubricant. Got a T-wrench, 1/2-inch drive T-wrench, 9/16 square socket, 8-point square, and 3/8 tap, 3/8 pipe thread tap. Now I'm going to cut off the end. This is uncut. Here's a cut one. You can see, hopefully you can see there how much I cut off. There's the matching flange to the one I threaded in. That's about how far it threads in. Might be able to get it to go further. I've got threads all the way to the bottom of the pilot hole, which overlaps this hole slightly. But the tapers, you know, the more you put it in there, the tighter it gets. I'm pretty sure this is going to work just fine. So, time to do this one. Oh, there's a shortened piece. I just prop that up there. Let's see if this will thread in. Of course, I already checked it, so I know it threads in. So now we'll thread in. No problem. Okay, it's time to do a little welding. Okay, so the cylinder is collapsed, and on the tractor I need 26 1/16 from the center to the center. So measuring from the outside of this to the outside of this, I put this exactly at 26 1/16, held it in place, laid a straight edge over there, marked it with a Sharpie. So I'm going to cut this off right there, and then I'll weld this on. So okay, now I've got the rod set up in the saw, it's clamped in the vise. I've got a piece of rubber wrapped around it to protect the chrome. I've got the saw blade dead center on the blue mark. We're going to cut the mark off. So we'll start the saw and let her down. Putting these two DOM pieces of tubing on the end is pretty tricky, especially since I don't have any kind of a jig. I'm only doing 2 of them. So you just got to measure and eyeball it, and I have scraps stacked up here to hold it just in the right position. And I'll put 2 tiny tacks on there, and then I'll take it and look at it some more, maybe tap it one way or the other, and gradually tack it here and tack it there until it's to the point where it's not going to move anymore, and then I can weld it. I put some solid tacks on there. I forgot something very important. I've got this piece of scrap that I use to cover the shaft to make sure it doesn't get any splatter on it. Now, I've got this tacked on. I eyed it up, sighted it, and no matter how careful you are, inevitably the thing on that goes onto the rod is going to be rolled one way or the other. Well, for the first serious weld, you pick the side where you want it to move towards you, and you put your first serious weld there, and it'll move just a little bit. So this isn't bad. It's actually pretty darn close, but it can move this way a fraction. Well, here's the, it's not quite finished, but it's all welded up. I still have to put grease fittings in them. But I'm going to dry fit them on the tractor, mark where the grease fittings go, and I'll put in the grease fittings, and I'll do the final tightening down of these. I have to make sure this is at the right angle, and there's special pipe dope for hydraulic lines that go in the National Pipe thread fittings. Here's the old parts that I hacked off. This is a completely different looking cylinder now. Hopefully it'll work. Well, hello again. I've got the cylinders dry fitted. I left the old cylinders still plumbed up into the system so I can keep this in service while I'm painting these. It's too cold to paint now, so it might take me a little while to get these ready to go. But they're dry fitted on both sides. The fittings make good clearance. This weld job, this piece right here is on there a little bit crooked. It makes this bind a little bit. It doesn't go in there nice and smooth. I might have to redo that.